Today, I'm going to be doing something that may or may not destroy my microwave. To do this, all I need is to light a match and cover it with a beaker. Then, I'll punch in 60 seconds and start cooking it. At first, it doesn't look like much is happening, but then it suddenly starts doing something kind of scary. This is all plasma, and it's basically just super hot, ionized gas. It's somewhat similar to fire, but much hotter and way more ionized. The moment the microwave turns off, it all disappears. For this video, I'm just going to be doing something that I find fun, and all I need is some ammonium dichromate. Now, I just need to pour some into a dish and light it on fire. It's sometimes a bit hard to get started, but it's eventually able to keep going on its own. What's happening here is a decomposition reaction where the ammonium dichromate is chemically falling apart. As it does this, it turns into green chromium oxide, and it produces a bunch of nitrogen gas and water vapor. At some point, it kind of starts looking like a little volcano, and it also lets off a lot of heat. It then keeps going like this until all of the ammonium dichromate has reacted. It eventually finished, and I now have a super puffy pile of chromium oxide, which isn't very useful. What's kind of fun, though, is to take a small amount of it and heat it using a blowtorch. Then, if I drop it into a flask full of ammonia gas, it makes a bunch of sparks, which kind of look like fireflies. Today, I've decided to try something that I saw on the internet. The first step is to pour some dilute hydrochloric acid into a beaker. Then on top of this, I'll dump in some copper sulfate, and I'll stir it until it all dissolves. What I have now is an acidic copper solution, and I'll pour it into a larger beaker. Then into this, I'll drop in a rolled up piece of aluminum foil, and now I just need to light it on fire. This is happening because the acid and the aluminum are reacting to make hydrogen gas, and the color is coming from the copper ions. It unfortunately didn't last too long because all the aluminum quickly got shredded. What I think is cool, though, is that when it's done, all the aluminum is gone, and I instead have a bunch of copper metal. Today, I'm gonna grow some metal. To get started, I'll need some tin, and I bought all of this from eBay. It's a bit dirty, though, and I'll have to clean it up. I'll do this by adding a bunch to a dish and blasting it with a blowtorch. The melting point of tin is quite low, and it's really easy to melt. A lot of the impurities will float to the surface, and if I'm careful, I can pour away the clean metal. What I have to do now is spread it out as much as I can. I honestly kind of failed doing this, but I think it still turned out okay. The tin that I have now is way cleaner, and I'll cut it into some smaller pieces. On top of this, I'll add some concentrated hydrochloric acid, and I'll turn on the hot plate. Over the next 24 hours, the tin slowly disappeared. It was all turning into tin 2 chloride, and at some point, I added some extra acid. When pretty much all the metal was gone, I felt that it was done. I waited for it to cool down, and then I poured some into a small dish that was connected to some batteries. Now to grow the crystals, all I have to do is connect the red wire. Almost immediately, something started growing. This was all tin, and it was forming as some really nice metal crystals. This was happening because the batteries were giving electrons to the tin 2 chloride and turning it back into its metallic form. When it eventually made it to the other side, I disconnected it, and I poked at the crystals. All of this is actual metal, and I think that it's really cool that I made it using electricity. Okay, so today I'm going to be doing something that I think is kind of gross. To get started, the first thing that I'll need to do is add some water to a beaker. Now, the next thing that I'll need is a super stinky chemical called hexamethylenediamine. I'll add about 4.4 grams of it to the water, and I'll stir it until it all disappears. It's now all gone, and I'll move on to making the other solution that I need. This one's also pretty simple, and the first ingredient is something called cyclohexane. I'll add about 100 mils of it, and then I'll pour in the last ingredient called adipoyl chloride. I'll mix this up a bit, and now I'm ready to do something nasty. To do this, I need to add 10 mils of each solution to a small beaker. I'll start with the stinky water-based one, and then on top of it, I'll carefully pour in the cyclohexane one. These two liquids aren't able to mix, and like water and oil, they stay separated. Now, all I need to do is use some tweezers. I'm able to pull out a gross slimy string, and if I wrap it on a glass rod, I can keep pulling it out. I really find that this looks pretty nasty, but it's actually just plastic. More specifically, it's nylon, and it's forming between the two liquids. I can keep pulling it until the chemicals run out, and I'm left with something that kind of looks like a cocoon. It's still full of water and cyclohexane though, and it's all soft and squishy. Now if I try pulling it apart, it's not actually very strong. This is because all the fibers are extremely thin and fragile. If they were a lot thicker though, like they are in clothing or in a fishing line, it would be a lot harder to do this.